Hi everybody, it's Cray and I teach watercolor, and today we are doing our Chickadee project. We have Keenan here working the cameras.
Keenan here.
And we are going to be doing this project in 4 steps. So our very first step is we will paint our bird. That's its own step. It's gonna be fine.
Great.
Our second step is we're gonna paint our bottom branch. Our third step is we're gonna paint our top branch, and that includes the berries. And then our very last step is just putting little stems to our berries.
Nice.
Yeah. We are using 3 colors for this project. So our very first color is yellow ochre. Our second color is red. And our last color is sea blue. We're using 2 paintbrushes for this project, around 6 and around 2. And we are using our Let's Make Art watercolor paper. Also our Let's Make Art brushes. Also our Let's Make Art paint. If you need any of it, you can find it at letsmakeart.com.
Comes in a box labeled Let's Make Art.
Have you heard of it?
I don't know.
Okay, when you get your box, you're going to have an outline in here. I already transferred my outline, but I just want to call attention to something, which is we're super celebrating the wet on wet technique. So we're just doing like basic shapes and then really dropping in color and letting that do the work for us. It's a celebration in watercolor and I'm super excited to do it. But when you paint your bird, I want you to try, especially like the belly and the back, because that's a light value, as you can see here. I want to keep it super light when I trace that. So then when I do this part, I don't have this really dark outline. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Everything else can be dark, but those areas, because we're dropping in such a light color, I want those to stay fairly light. Okay, and if you need help on how to transfer outlines, we have directions on the welcome sheet and also like hundreds of tutorials where I show you how to do that.
700.
Okay.
Oath.
And then let's get started. If you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
Thank you. Now we're going to start with step 1, which is putting our birds in. So with everything that we paint in this project, I'm going to start by doing clean water first and then dropping in the color, and the color is going to move by itself and we're just going to embrace whatever happens. This is an exercise in letting go. Okay? Now, I also want to acknowledge that we're mixing a lot of our colors today. And what that looks like is, especially with liquid watercolors, when you mix watercolors and you put them on the paper, as they dry, different colors pop out in different areas at different times. So I want you to see that as an opportunity to discover something interesting instead of being upset that it's not doing exactly what we want it to do. Okay?
Okay.
What?
It's hard for me. I won't lie to you.
It is hard. It's hard because there's an element of letting go, of control, you know?
Big element of letting go.
It's big.
It might help to have food before you.
Yes.
I feel like letting go also comes with having an even temperament sometimes.
You need to be in a right mental space. If you're tired or if you're hungry, maybe go take care of those things
15
first.
minutes, grab a piece of bread or something.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna start by kind of mixing a little bit of a neutral. As you can see here, I have yellow ochre, which is this actually like really beautiful gold color. And I wanna tone that color down a little bit, like desaturate it just a tiny bit for like the belly of my bird and the back of my bird. So I'm gonna take some yellow ochre, pull it to the center. And I'm gonna grab just a tiny bit of red, and that's gonna warm it up. And then let's grab a tiny bit of blue and let's just see what happens. Okay, that turns it very green. So the opposite of green is red. Bring that back in there. And this to me feels like a more neutral brown than if I were to just add water. Like, see the saturation level of yellow between this and this? So this is what I'm trying to lean towards just a little bit, just like not as in your face yellow, but still a warm color. And I want to be intentional with my water placement because that's essentially going to, it's creating boundaries for our paint to go. So wherever you put water and then touch the paint, that's where the paint is gonna go, okay?
Okay.
So grab my 6 and I'm just gonna do a swoop. Swoop. And then right away, I'm gonna grab my brown and just swoop it in. That's it.
That is a color that I didn't expect to see there.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a soft. And if you want to do one more, you can. Boop. But like this, I'm trying to teach you guys how to touch the paper less with your paintbrush. Okay? So this is really like, just go for it. Make a commitment, put it in, move on. Okay?
How to paint without touching the paper.
Yeah, pretty much.
I love this.
Okay. How to paint without touching the paper. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix like as dark of a value as I can. So basically I'm just gonna mix all the colors together. I have some sea blue, some red, let's grab in some yellow. But I want it to lean more towards like blue-black. So no matter what, I wanna make sure I have more blue in there than any other color. And this sea blue leans towards green a lot. So if you want the blue to lean more like purple, add more red. There we go. Okay, that's a great color. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the wing. And again, I'm going to do one swoop and then drop in the color and just see where it goes. Swoop. And as you can see, it touched a little bit on my first water swoop, but that's okay. Don't get mad at it. Like there's gonna be accidental bleeds across this entire thing. That's okay. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll maybe help it a little bit and be like, I want you to go all the way to the tip. But don't go too crazy here because when you work an area back and forth, you lose a lot of the interesting like value shifts that can happen, okay? So, bada bing, bada boom. We got a wing. Isn't it pretty?
Yes, it is.
And now what we're gonna do is this bottom part, like the beak that's connected to the chest. And so this one I'm being a little bit more careful. If you wanna use your 2, you can. I feel pretty confident that I can get this shape with my 6, so use whatever you feel good about. And then I'm gonna grab my dark and just drop it in. And I just wanna make sure that I get all the way to the edges. And I might take my 2 and just sharpen the beak a little bit. And we're not doing the top of the beak, it's just the bottom of the beak. Like this is a very gestural painting. We're just trying to get basic shapes here. And now I'm gonna do the top of the head. And as you can see, I decided not to do an eyeball. Because again, I think that there is such value in simplifying something and just seeing how even without a full beak, a full eyeball, a detailed wing, we can still get a bird, you know?
Yep. I was actually going to ask if you've ever tried to use as few shapes as possible and still portray an animal or a bird or something.
Yes, and that was the inspiration for this project.
Cool.
Is I was just like, how can we, what simple shapes and brushstrokes, just single swoops, and that's a wing, and one long skinny one, and that's a tail, and one tiny triangle, and that's a beak. So I was really trying to celebrate small, basic, simple. Look at this. We have done like 4 brushstrokes. Well, more than that. But you know what I'm saying.
Well, that's semantics when you get into the details.
Okay, I'm gonna rinse my brush pretty good because I wanna just do a hint of the back. If you wanna just go straight into the tail, you can, but I felt like I needed to kind of like shape the back of the bird a little bit. So I'm gonna rinse my brush and use just water. Just do a swoop. Grab my neutral that I already mixed, swoop it in. That's it. Okay, and now let's do our tail. Same thing, 6, but I'm gonna do more straight, uneven lines. Grab this dark value, just drop it in. And you can see I'm kind of just doing long strokes, just dropping that in. And when we get to the end here, I'm okay if I get kind of like a, see how it's like jagged a little bit? I want that. I feel like that is communicating feathers for me. Well, like there's our bird. Isn't that cool?
That's super cool.
That's why I just did it in one step. Now, if you want to, sometimes I'll go back in, and if I just want to like darken up an area or like slightly adjust the shape of something, you can. Or if you want to do one more swoop.
Whoa.
But try to just be intentional with every time your brush goes to that paper. That's all I'm asking, because it's really easy for us to just like keep doing stuff without really knowing what it is that we're trying to do on our paper. So this project, I wanted to be like, okay, let's think about this. Also, if you want to do something really cool, which I love, like let's look at the top of my head. And I put in the paint and it's really cool and all this stuff, but it's kind of evened out in value. So if you just want to create just a slight value adjustment, you can just, while it's still wet, take a paper towel and just do one little pickup. And you can get some really cool colors underneath. Okay?
Okay.
Great. Let's move on.
This bird has a lot of potential for really cool colors too.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a gorgeous color.
I love the simplicity of it.
Yes.
Okay, now we're gonna move on and do that same thing with our branches. So I need to mix a brown. A brown is essentially dark orange. So I wanna really take my yellow ochre and red. My piles of color here got a little bit muddy, so I'm just pouring more, and I need to calm down. So yellow ochre, red, okay, and that's like orange, right? So let's tone that down with a little bit of sea blue. There we go. And now I have this kind of more darker brown. And then what I like to do is I want to have like other hues that I can pull from and drop in as well. So I'm going to keep some of my yellow ochre clean. Maybe I'll take some of this brown and add some of this like dark blue that I had for the bird and mix that in there. And it's actually kind of nice to pull from colors that you've already mixed, because then they can like talk to each other in the painting. Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
Yeah, I don't need to explain that further. Great.
I mean, I think of complementary colors.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I think of when you say that.
Well, I just mean like this dark blue, whatever color that we mixed, by introducing that a tiny bit into my branch. And if you look at it here, you can see I did that there. So then this element can relate to this element.
Got it.
You know what I mean? It's kind of
Yes.
nice to have, you don't always have to be really thoughtful about that, but sometimes it's nice just to have them kind of like speak to each other.
That makes sense.
Okay, still using my 6. And I'm gonna go, my outline ended before my taped edge. So if that happens, you can just continue the line to your taped edge so you have a clean edge. And I'm gonna just do it section by section. Drop in water, grab my brown, drop that in, and maybe drop in some other color, and a swoop here and there, and a swoop there. But we're really like keeping it simple. One thing I do like to do though with this technique is to make sure I have a nice clean edge, is sometimes I'll just go along the edge with the color so it's a little bit sharper. We're gonna keep going. And you can see I left some spaces here. Do you see these spaces in the outline?
Yes.
That's because I want to put red berries there, but I want to keep the red really vibrant, and watercolor is transparent. So if I try and put the red berries over this brown branch, that red is gonna get lost a little bit. So you just leave the spaces out for wherever you want berries, okay? So now we do this part. Grab some brown. Just drop it in. And it's gonna move, it's gonna do the work for you. That's really why I like watercolor.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's like lazy painting.
This is, I mean, listen, I don't like where your head's at, but this is, sometimes it tricks you.
Yeah, it does. It
It's
really
like,
does.
oh, you wanted me to be lazy? Not today.
I'm gonna do things you don't want and drive you crazy.
Oh, you didn't want me to combine complementary colors? Oops. If watercolor had a personality.
Seriously, don't you tell me how to live. Okay, and then I'm just gonna keep going up. Now remember, with branches and trees, for the most part in general, the further they move away from the trunk, the thinner they get. So here you can see my twig branch is pretty thick, and then over here it's nice and thin. So just if you're adding more or if you're creating your own, just kind of keep that rule in mind, as eventually these lines just transition to something really thin, okay?
Okay.
So if you need to switch to your thinner brush, go for it. Gosh, sorry, I just want to take a second and love what I'm making really quick.
It's important to do.
Look at that.
I know.
That's so cool.
And I was just thinking it'd be funny to section this whole thing off into little squares and try and guess what it is. Because there are spots where you're like, what? If you look at the top right corner, there's just two little lines disconnected.
Yeah.
Right?
You're like, guess what I'm painting?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to make sure I have a clean pile of fresh red before I do my berries, because we want this red to be vibrant. And if you need to get clean water, I feel like mine's okay. It's muddy, but I don't think it will take away from my painting. And then I'm going to use my 6, and I'm just going to do different sized circles. And as you can see, I don't have an outline for those because I want you guys to just play, have fun with it, and just drop the color in. And sometimes it will move across the whole thing, sometimes it won't. If you want to help it, you can. I actually like a couple of them I like helping a little bit, but sometimes I like not having a perfectly formed circle. I think it actually gives hint to dimension without really having to do a lot of work. So I'm a fan of that. If you want your red to be a little bit deeper, you can add a tiny bit of this sea blue, because that will give it like, can you see? Let me bring that in a little bit.
If you push it up. Thank
See
you.
how it turns it to like this like dark,
What?
yeah, like purpley red color, which is sometimes just pretty. If you want to like add a swoop in there too.
Wow.
And I kind of want to go a little bit bigger. I want to be a little bit louder with my berries. So I'm going to make my circles bigger. Drop in that color. And another thing that I want you to be aware of is it's really easy to create like really separate berries. How do I say this? Like circle, circle, circle. But in reality, they're three-dimensional and they'll layer on top of each other, right? Because it's like a bunch of them. So let your circles be a little bit like imperfect. Layer them on top of each other. Let it be like messy.
Paint each one differently, that might help.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, it's easy to get a little bit like precise, but we want these to be like how we would probably see them. And then drop, 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 drop.
Man, I love that red.
More berries. Drop. And when they touch like this, the water will move within them, which I think is cool. Let's do more up here. Now, one thing that I am going to do is I feel like the shape of this doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of how it meets up with this. You see how it goes into like a V?
Yep.
So all I'm going to do is kind of just shape that a little bit more, like that. And I just want to make sure that the thickness lines up with what's going on down here. So if I need to thicken this a little bit, I can. But also, like, trees are pretty wonky. You know, they're not like, those are general rules in terms of like thin and thickness, you know? So if sometimes your tree has a thicker area right in the middle, I bet you there's a tree like that exists. So don't stress too much, you know? And you can see on my reference photo here that my red, I did a berry up here when it was still dry, wet. So it kind of like exploded a lot. And I just decided to go with it.
He was snacking anyway.
Yeah, he just got some berries on his belly.
He's like, what? I don't have opposable thumbs? How am I going to eat these?
But I just want to say, like, there's going to be moments where you're like, oh, shoot, shoot, shoot. But trust me when I say, let it go. And maybe, I kind of like that it overlapped a lot though. So I'm going to bring another berry to the party. Okay, great. Step 3, same thing, but on this top branch right here. And I'm gonna mix a little bit more brown. So I'm gonna have red, yellow ochre, tiny bit of space blue. Maybe some more green to neutralize that red. Maybe a little bit more. I have green on my palette because I mix sea blue with yellow ochre. That's how I have this pile of green. But you also have a leaf green in your box. So if you want to use green, you can. You don't really need it though.
Yeah.
Okay. And before we move on, I just want to like call attention to the variations in value and color that we're getting just on this section alone. Like I went back and dropped in like more of a gray color right here, which I really loved. I didn't work this area back and forth, so I have this like beautiful highlight.
Yeah, that highlight has been, I like that highlight.
I like that.
Don't erase it.
I won't. Although that is what I tend to do when you say that you like something.
That's why I stuttered. I was like, wait, I don't want to tell her I like it.
Okay, same thing. Take your 6, use just water, wet the area. I'm doing section by section so the water doesn't dry before I have a chance to put the color in. So it's nice and wet. Grab some brown, go along the edge. Let's drop in some other color like ochre. Let's get some of this gray, dark color along some of the edge here. And you can create little funky bumps on your branch. Those exist, you know?
They do.
I like to have a dark value coming out from where it meets the tape. Okay, and then the next section, boop, boop, just water. Some brown. And just water. We're getting really thin up here. Some brown. And in the tiny areas, it gets a little bit trickier to like add in other colors and stuff, so just do your best. And then we'll rinse and then do our berries. I need to pour more red on my palette. So again, just circles, let them kind of touch. And some of these, if you touch that water into wooded area. That red might bleed, but that's okay. If you need to help it mix, you can. But again, just be intentional. And maybe I'll make it so it's just like this bird is eyeing these berries here. And it's just like, I'm gonna eat you. I want that. You just want to make sure that you're, wherever there's space, like lifted, that you're putting berries there. So it doesn't just look like chunks missing of your painting. You know what I mean?
Got me.
Okay. And maybe a hint of one, like, yes, it still goes. We're still having berries up here. Well, that's looking pretty good, isn't it?
I know.
And what I like to do too sometimes is while it's wet like this, I'll mix a darker red. And then like on these over here that they're not totally dry, but they're not nearly as wet as these ones here, is you can do like, you know how sometimes those berries, like where the stem comes out of, they have like a point, like a little dark spot. You can put those in. Or you can just do like a swoosh along the bottom just for another value. So it kind of gives it just a little bit of dimension. So I'm just kind of swooping in, going back and forth between putting like dark dots and swoops. And let's try some over here. This dark value will probably move a little bit more because of how wet the area is. But that's okay. I'm feeling kind of edgy. And then we're gonna let that dry just for a second before we do our stems. And I think I might do just one more layer on this tail just to make it a little bit darker. So I still have that really dark value mixed. If you need to mix more, go ahead and do that. And same thing, I'm just gonna wet the area and drop it. If you need to do another swoop here. I actually feel really good about my beak area. What I might do is just like go it just a little bit right here. But again, it's just little hints, nothing too, I don't know, crazy, you know?
Yeah. Edgy has its place.
That's right. This is confident painting. This is us saying, yeah, I'm just gonna do one stroke right here and it's gonna be fine.
This is confident painting.
We're not going to do an eye today.
We're painting a bird without an eye. Trust.
I love that.
Just trust. Okay, and then I'm just gonna shape some of my branch area. Just a little bit. And if you even want to like add a little, you can. Okay, now we're gonna do the last step, which is just adding little stems onto the berries. So like in this area where there's like a bunch of berries coming out of here, then I'm just gonna like continue that line and then have it go towards and meet the berries. Does that make sense? Boop,
Yes.
boop, boop. But it's possible that the berries are like covering it itself. So if it doesn't make sense, like think of what it would be like for a line to continue to it. And if it makes sense where you would see a stem peeking out, put it there. But if it doesn't, don't force it. So like probably in between these, that's where you would see them.
And the few that are touching a couple of the berries will give you an implied, oh, that one's stick is hidden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this one, I don't know what's going on here. So it doesn't, I'm not gonna put one there. You know?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense. This one I can see going this way. You guys, that's it.
Wow.
That's our project. Isn't that fun?
That's awesome.
I was actually really excited about this painting. The first one I did, this was the first rendition of it. I was just like,
Cool.
I love simple paintings. How can we make this as simple as possible? And so I just really quickly sketched and dropped in color. And I was just like, this is what we're doing. Let's do it.
That's awesome.
And I just hope that this shows to you guys the opportunity here when it comes to watercolor. The color and the water work and move together. That is not a problem. It is an opportunity to see what interesting things we can make. And it allows you, like, think of something that you enjoy painting. Maybe it's a flower, maybe it's a scene, maybe it's, you know, whatever it is. And think back, how can I break this down into basic shapes? And is it possible for me to just do a wash of water and drop in color and see what happens? Like, what other animals or scenes or things can you do this to? Because there is, it's a practice in 1, looking at basic shapes, 2, letting go, and 3, simplifying. And when you're able to like simplify your artwork, it just helps with confidence a little bit. It helps with overworking. It helps with, like, you have to make decisions faster and commit to them. And for beginners, that's really scary. But it's a great tool and it's a great exercise. So I hope you take the idea of this project and run with it and play with it. And I can't wait to see how your birds turn out and what you decided for your painting. So if you want to share your work, you can join our watercolor group. That's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. It's large and it's on Facebook, but it's fun.
It is.
And you can also tag us on Instagram. We'll share all the hashtags below where you can tag us and let us see your work. And then if you want this project, it's part of our Merry and Bright watercolor box. So paint with me. We have a good time. Keenan?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome. Oh, welcome and goodbye, because we're done here. We'll see you later. Bye.
And in case I don't see you.